This is Cutting Down the Nets. This is Cutting Down the Nets. It's March Madness time. This is Thursday's first round games. All 16 of them broken down bit by bit, exploring every angle and showing you what the recent efficiencies show for each matchup. As for me, I've been doing this a long time, been doing it pretty well. Let's hope this year works just as good as the others. But without further ado, let's kick off March Madness as we always have.
Let's go!
God, I love that. Okay, we start with West Virginia, Maryland. What are we going to do? So Maryland, 363rd in Eric Haslam's consistency rating. That means really hard to predict. I do note that the road neutral efficiencies lean West Virginia. Maryland's been very good at home, and that shows in some of these projections. From a shot quality perspective, West Virginia's 23rd, Maryland's 21st. So, I mean, this truly is looking like a toss-up. So in these situations, I just hope that enough steam goes one way or the other, and I could bet the other side. So for each of these matchups, I will show you Paddy. That is the average recent efficiencies of both teams mashed up. More information on how I do that is in my pinned video. Next is the median of that same data set. So sometimes the averages will show a ceiling, show a floor, but also sometimes include some outliers. So you kind of balance those numbers together to try and come up with what you think is going to happen. I'm using shot quality's year-to-date efficiencies for this column, and then I have a formula that just weights recent play, basically the change since, like mid-February in their shot quality numbers. This is only using data, adjusted efficiencies of road neutral games. The next one over is only using efficiencies of quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 games. Next is Torvik's projection. Next is KenPom's projection. And then you have the actual spread at time of press. That is subject to change. So everything is based off the bottom team. In a regular season game, it's typically the home team. In these cases, I'll just say the bottom team. So if you see a minus, the bottom team is favored in that scenario. If you do not, the top team is. So right now, West Virginia is favored by 2 points. Paddy has West Virginia by 1.1. Paddy median has it by 3.4. Shot quality is close to a pick'em. Using only road neutral data, West Virginia by 3. Using only quadrant 1 and 2 data, West Virginia by 2. Torvik says 1.8. KenPom says 1. All that means this game is really, really close. So it is an interesting real-life game. I'm just not seeing much value. This line is currently very efficiently set. I expect nearly equal turnovers. I think there's a tiny offensive rebound edge for West Virginia, and the Terps are likely to get to the free throw line more often. So without line movement, this truly is a toss-up. The final little box I'll show here is using the data I have, which is kind of a combo of these numbers, the expected cover percentage at various lines. This kind of accounts for movement. Like, hey, what if that dropped to 1? Do you like, West Virginia then? Like, still not really. Really a buy point's probably 3.5 Maryland. Doubt that comes. But crazier things have happened. These data, these projections are using, again, my algorithm of recent efficiencies, and then I have a standard deviation for each team too. I then plug that in to a little computer program I created that simulates that 10,000 times, and then it tells me what percent of the time does Team X win by that number. So this first game, pretty anticlimactic. This is a true toss-up game. These are very even teams. I'm having a tough time finding an edge. I don't know which way I'll go. And that's the very first game of the tournament. Let's get to game 2. We have Virginia versus 13-seeded Furman. So some spread ranges here. In each case, my data is suggesting playing Furman, and I will be betting Furman. The pause to that case down below is shot quality data certainly favors the Virginia side. All my data points that I rely on favor the Furman side. So from a matchup perspective, Virginia is going to be without one of their scorers. I wouldn't call him a role player. I wouldn't call him a key player. But Vanderbilt will be out. That lowers the offense, although they sub him in for a defensive replacement. So it kind of helps their defense even more, but certainly not great for their offense. The story of this game, in my opinion, is that Furman shoots 46.4% of their shots from behind the arc. And when you face a pack line defense that packs it in like Virginia does, you're going to have the opportunity for clean looks over top of that. So this is a decent matchup for the Furman offense. I think they'll get what they want to do, but you still have to make the shots. I was talking to my brother. I'm like, I don't know. What's the number? Like 9 threes and you cover, like no matter what. 5 threes you probably don't. So, I mean, going to have to make shots. So, again, I like the Furman offense here, but they're going to need to slow the Virginia offense down. Certainly not a juggernaut of an offense, but they're generating good looks. They don't really have the shot makers. But long story short, I'm going to be betting the Paladins in this matchup. Everything I play will be logged on BetStamp. I'm going to be in Las Vegas, so I'm just waiting to play there. I'll probably have to take some fishy lines, whatever. We'll deal with it when we get there. Next game up, Missouri and Utah State. Recent efficiencies favor Utah State. Shot quality favors Missouri slightly, but pretty close. This line is sitting at 1.5. So it's kind of off market from where the typical analytics sites are. Like KenPom is saying, hey, Utah State by 4. So why is this line short? Well, smarter people than me have noted that this is not the best matchup for Utah State. So while they have adjusted efficiencies on their side, Missouri just keeps kind of, as I put here, clowning the analytics. They are playing over their skis. They're playing well. They get the job done. And how many times have we seen the Mountain West just like look good on paper and basketball's not played on a spreadsheet? If you want the bull case on Utah State, they're 10th in three-point percentage, and they take 42% of their shots from behind the arc. Missouri, 70th in three-point percentage, and they take 43% of their shots from deep. So I think the key matchup angle here is that Missouri is 5th best at forcing turnovers, which causes some concerns on the Utah State side. So the only team that's like that in the Mountain West, and I don't want to group these teams together because they are different styles, but UNLV applies pressure. And Utah State did sweep UNLV. I think they won one game by 4 and then one game by 27 or something like that. But in those games, they had turnover rates of 26.7 and 30.4. That means 30% of their possessions ended in a turnover. So that limits the amount of shot opportunities you're going to have, and that is a major concern here. Mizzou, 362nd in defensive rebounding, kind of like UNLV. And Utah State was able to take advantage in one of the 2 games against UNLV. So here's the deal. I mean, Missouri, the SEC has 10 teams below 225th in three-point percentage. So while Missouri's three-point defense looks okay, three-point defense is typically pretty lucky, no one in the SEC could shoot outside of 3 teams. So, yeah, I'm leaning Utah State. But again, people smarter than me have mentioned the matchup concerns here. So, obviously, the closer to a pick'em, I do think if there's enough steam, this could swing, and you could get Utah State as a dog. It's not that unusual to have that type of movement closer to tip. We'll just see what happens. But I don't know. It's hard. With KenPom saying Utah State by 4, it's going to be hard for people to bunk that. All right, next up, KU versus Howard. So this is shown as a big Paddy value. The line is 21. KenPom says 19. Torvik says 17. Recent data says even tighter than that. So before you think this is a no-brainer, this Howard team has run pretty pure from three-point down the stretch. So what that's going to do is if they're shooting above their expected output, it raises their adjusted offense for that period of time and just kind of inflates their quote-unquote Paddy number. Howard also has shown the ability to turn over opponents within their conference. KU is a different story, and they certainly have major concerns protecting the ball against KU. On top of all of this, Howard allows a 30% transition rate, but they could be making enough three-pointers. So I lean Howard. All the data is suggesting that it's just hard in these 116 games to be like, man, I could literally be cooked in 8 minutes. I've seen it before. Next up, San Diego State versus Charleston. I think Charleston is the thirst trap here. They've played one top 75 opponent. SDSU only allows transition 19% of the time. That comes from hoop math. Most of the stats I cite here are all free, by the way. You just got to know where to look. So hoop math will have transition offense, transition defense rates, and the Aztecs only allow transition 19% of the time. They also defend the three-point line well, but they will give up a lot of attempts there. I wouldn't consider Charleston a great shooting team, although they certainly will try it with volume. So I would label them in the chucking category. So staring at the floorboards, blog I follow, Jordan Majeski, you can follow him on Twitter as well. Great follow. His blog for the year is, I laugh because it's $10 for the year, and you get like detailed game write-ups of like every game that's played during the year, like the biggest no-brainer ever. So anyway, he notes that the Aztecs can be beat with pick and roll, that their pick and roll defense has struggled, but Charleston just does not run that type of offense. So all these things added together, I'm hoping for a number 5.5 or better, but I will be on the Aztecs side here. Next up, Arizona and Princeton. So you'll notice that the median for Arizona is on one side of the spread, and the average is on the other side of the spread. So, decision time, you can sit out the game if you want, or you can kind of figure out like what other things lead this to a decision. So they had 2 games where they kind of got torched from three-point, uncharacteristic. It raised their defensive efficiency. That's why Paddy is a little worse than the median. So I do think the median is probably a better predictor in this case. Princeton can muck it up a bit with their, lengthy possessions, kind of draining the clock. They've been very efficient, albeit versus the Ivy, in all shot quality shot types. And I don't know. I think Arizona could have stumbled versus a more pressure-oriented defense. They've certainly been sloppy with the ball. Their point guard, Kerr Kriss, is not a great ball handler. So there was matchups that probably scared me, even as a 2 versus 15 for Arizona. But this one, not so much. From a betting perspective, I do lean Arizona, but as you can see, I'm not seeing a whole lot of value there. Next game up, Hogs versus the Illini. So Nick Smith, now healthy, talented freshman for Arkansas. Paddy uses, in some weight, 15 games. 7 of those have had a healthy Nick Smith, so half of the data is missing him. And the Paddy adjusted offense is 114. With just him, so splits on, is 118. So small sample, but he does help the offense. No one in the Big Ten applies pressure at all. Technically Northwestern, but not really like pressure. Like they just like run some post traps and things like that. And even knowing that conference doesn't really pressure you, the Illini turnover rate is still pretty high. So that's probably the edge for Hogs I'm looking at. But this is a tight game, and I'm looking for small edges. So turnovers, Nick Smith, and the data kind of supporting that, albeit kind of thin. I am leaning or will be betting the Arkansas side there. Next up, if you followed the program for a while, you know I am technically a Hawk fan, although no one drags the Hawks as much as I do. We have Bruce Pearl reunited against his former team. He was assistant coach under Tom Davis back in the 80s before he cheated. Shot quality, loves Iowa. Here's why. Fran's offense generates exceptional looks. Three-pointers at the rim, excellent spacing. If you watch the game, they really space out. They're not getting each other's way, and they create quality looks. They're good in transition. They have a secondary break if the initial transition doesn't work. It's a well-coached offense. I want to stress that, offense. So they've been missing lots of threes and lots of bunnies. But, so shot quality's rating that as like, hey man, they're getting great shots. Look, I've watched this team a lot this year. They can't make them. It looks like they should, but they can't. And I think outside like Sanford and Murray, like I don't know what shooters you can trust. I mean, people can pop up for games, but I don't think this is a good shooting team. So while they generate quality looks, yeah, certainly concerns about making them. Although the offense has hummed most of the year. Flip side, the defense, my God. I mean, just getting assaulted by everyone. So, I don't know. If you think it's bad luck that an opponent makes 14 out of 26 threes, yeah, then a lot of value on the Hawkeyes. But if you watch these games, like there's not a defender in the screen when the shot leaves the shooter's hand. So, I don't know. Bonuses for Iowa, they can crush the offensive glass. But that adjusted defense right now for Iowa is a 106. The national average is a 104.6. And there's only like 5 teams in the tournament with an adjusted defense below average. And yeah, you're looking at one of them. So I just don't know how they can stop anyone these days. So from a data perspective, right now Auburn's favored by 1-ish, 1.5, depending on what book. You can kind of see where the data lies there. Paddy likes the Auburn side. Paddy median likes the Iowa side. Shot quality likes the Iowa side. Road neutral, quad 1, quad 2 likes the Auburn side. So kind of another toss-up, which is pretty common with 8-9 games. Next up, Duke. Oh, Coach K, get up. You all right, bro? As you know, John Shire has taken over for Coach K. Oddly plays like Big Ten basketball with like lottery pick freshmen, which is kind of interesting. But hey, they won the SEC tournament. They had a good season. Go get them. So Duke's guards have been outclassed at times. You'll see that, like, I've seen it against Miami, some other teams. So enter Max Asmus, who is the elite mid-major guard. I will also note that Isaac McBride is shooting over 40% for the year. Connor Vanover, who's a transfer from the SEC, from Arkansas, 7'3" guy, has made 43 three-pointers. So the team is full of elite shooters. They're 34th in three-point percentage, 10th in two-point percentage, and 10th in free throw percentage. They flat out can shoot. So Duke can methodically get theirs, and if they don't, they can crush the offensive boards. But in a game where Duke's kind of slowing it down, and you have an elite shooting team and elite shot makers, 6.5 points is too many. Next up, Texas versus Colgate. So I'm going to go down Narrative Street down some history here with Colgate. I don't like to do that, but Colgate played one top 100 opponent this year. Sharper people than me have noted how favorable a draw Plodding Wisconsin was for them last year. Year before, they faced an athletic Arkansas team. Now, here's the deal. I don't like to compare, like, 2 years ago, this team versus this team. It just doesn't matter as much to me. But this more athletic Arkansas team, where everyone's like, hey, they're going to get bullied, Colgate actually led 33-19 late in the first half. They were within a possession with 7 minutes left, and then ultimately succumbed to a 17-point loss. But the only team they faced this season with a defensive effective field goal below 50% or an adjusted defense below 102, which is not good, was Auburn, and they lost by 17. So while Paddy's favoring, certainly not strongly, but favoring the Colgate side, I potentially go off-brand here and play the Horns. Shot quality certainly likes the Horns. I just haven't seen, I wish there was just like 2 more games that Colgate played against anyone that plays defense to see how they'd compare, or just a different class of athleticism. Next game up, just Northwestern versus Boise State, 7-10 game. I mentioned that this is probably a 64 possession game, roughly. So good one for the sickos. There will be other games that are definitely for the sickos. So this is a big shot quality edge here. Northwestern comes in at 11th. Boise at 68th. Recent efficiencies lean the Cats as well. So, I mean, it likely comes down to shot making. You're going to have to make shots. Chase Adij, Bubui versus Rice and Agbo. So I'll be betting Northwestern. What the recent data is saying is that Northwestern is getting better looks, and the recent efficiencies are saying that Northwestern is also making those looks as well. Houston, Northern Kentucky. Houston, the favorite to win the tournament. What a time to be alive. Trying desperately not to count the double or the offensive rebound edge for Houston here twice. So I don't want to double count that. They're 4th in the country in offensive rebound percentage. Northern Kentucky is 333rd. You'll probably hear that a lot. Hopefully enough to drive this number up a little higher, because I am leaning the north side here. So let's look at bull cases for both teams. The bull case for Houston is with that massive of offensive rebounding edge. If you miss, you just shoot it again because you're going to get the rebound. And then you just keep doing that until you score. You could shoot 33%, but never have a possession where you don't score. So yeah, that's not good. But here's the bull case for Northern Kentucky. It's a big number. It's a 58 possession game, likely, just based on the the pace stats of both these teams. And this is a defense that can generate extra opportunities with a 23.2% TO rate. Is Marcus Sasser back for Houston? Probably, but if you're 20-point favorites, do you play him? I don't know. So all data here is aligning towards a Northern Kentucky play. It's going to feel gross, especially when you watch the game and be like, oh my God, they got to stop, but they just can't get the rebound. Could be frustrating, but I lean Northern Kentucky here. Next up, Tennessee versus the Ragin' Cajuns, ULL, also known as Louisiana Lafayette, however you want to look at it. Tennessee's elite defense transitioned into a good defense after opponents finally made more than 20% of their threes. I think through like 18 games, opponents had only made like a fifth of their threes. And then over the last 10 games or so, finally started to see that number creep up a bit. Again, smarter people than me have noted some matchup advantages for the Vols. Most notably, they're elite at limiting off-ball movement, which is the type of offense that Louisiana runs. Also, you've seen in previous tournaments, teams zoning Tennessee. Oregon State comes to mind. I believe it was them. Forced Tennessee to just shoot jump shot after jump shot. And it was a clank fest. And you would like to see that again, but Louisiana has not used much zone defense this year at all. So from a data perspective, I see value on the Cajuns. From a narrative perspective, no one loves betting against Rick more than me and my brother and my friends. But from a matchup perspective, it's not ideal. I still will lean the Louisiana side, though. Let's hope that number gets just a little bit bigger. Texas A&M and Penn State is next. So, I've been riding Texas A&M for a while. And on paper, this looks like a toss-up. What I like about Texas A&M is they're typically playing these SEC teams that can't shoot. And what Texas A&M does is they force you further and further and further away from the basket until you're taking all three-pointers. Enter Penn State, 10th in three-point rate, 11th in three-point percentage. This is in the entire country, so they're straight up lethal from outside. Texas A&M is 6th in that it's Eric Haslam's proximity, so distance from basket that you're forcing shots to take. Some teams give up like all layups and they have a really small proximity, and Texas A&M's the opposite. They force you away from the hoop. So A&M opponents are shooting a three 46% of the time. Penn State wants to shoot threes, so schematically, the Aggies are trying to force Penn State into doing what they would like to do anyway, which is space out the floor and get clean looks. So, yeah, I think that's an advantage for Penn State. And also, Texas A&M lives off the extra opportunities, second chance points, turnovers, free throws. And Penn State can limit those as well. They're a good defensive rebounding team. They protect the ball extremely well. So Penn State still has to make these shots, but I think the volume will be there. Again, like how many threes can we get? If they hit 10 threes, we cover. If they hit 5, we probably don't. So that is kind of wishy-washy here. I lean Penn State. I'll decide when I arrive in Las Vegas. Next up, we have UCLA and UNC Asheville. So two big things I'm trying to figure out here is shot quality's profile of Asheville is really bizarre. They were 26-6 on the year with a real record, and shot quality had their should-be record as 14-18. So they kept winning games where shot quality was like, those were bad shots. I can't believe you made them. So at this stage of the game, I think we're dealing with shot makers, and they do have some people that are lethal from 3-point. So Jones and forgive pronunciation, I don't know if it's A-B or a B, are elite 3-point shooters above 40%. Then they've got this super freak, 6'10", Drew Pember. So they've got players. Here's the other side. UCLA lost Jalen Clark. I'm sure you'll hear all about that. But he was their best defender. And there's some concerns that Adam Bona does not go as well. So I lean UNCA, but they only played two or three top 150 teams all year. They did beat UCF in like a double overtime game. But they lost by 23 to Dayton and 32 to Arkansas, and I think UCLA is a class above those teams. So certainly some concerns here. Not surprised to see the shot quality number where it is. But Paddy leans Asheville. I think Jalen Clark matters, and he's only missed a game and a half so far. So that's not really factored into the data, and the line's right where you'd expect it to be from a KenPom's perspective. So that's what I got. But in closing, I will move to let's go! Oh my god, it's so good. It's like one of my favorite things in the world. So this spreadsheet, you saw snippets of it. This will be in the description of this video. You'll note that Alabama doesn't have an opponent yet. And you'll note that Iowa State doesn't have an opponent yet. So I have some projections in there, and I'm just guessing at what I think the lines would be. So you'll see tabs on that spreadsheet. Playing games are there. I'll have NIT games is there as well. And then the Friday video will be released in the near future. So this is cutting down the nets. We'll get back at this for the Friday slate. And then we'll have some briefer videos for the Saturday and Sunday kind of live from Las Vegas. So bets will be logged on BetStamp. I think I've made it fairly clear which ones I'm betting for sure. And then I'm on the fence with a bunch of stuff right now. And we'll kind of see what the lines do. So this is Cutting Down the Nets. Thanks for stopping by. Good luck, everybody.